Welcome to me, where suspenseful, thrilling, and mysterious stories will draw you into a world where the lines between reality and fantasy seem to blur. When the night falls, when all the sounds gradually quiet down, leaving only your own heartbeat and breathing, that's when these stories begin. Tensions, unsolved mysteries, moments that will make you hold your breath in fear or curiosity, all are waiting for you ahead. Find a comfortable seat, dim the lights, and let this sound guide you on a journey that is not for the faint of heart. I want each of you to leave a comment sharing where you are in the world. And if you are enjoying the episodes, don't forget to give a like and subscribe to the channel now. Relax. Are you ready? If so, join me in the first story right now. The Quiet Witness. Ava Winter had always been defined by her words. They were her weapon, her shield, her very identity. As a journalist, she had built her career on exposing truths hidden beneath layers of deceit. Her voice, steady, compelling, unmistakable, had won her awards and opened doors to places most people could only dream of. But now it was gone. How did this happen to me? She wondered, her eyes tracing the blank walls of her small, lifeless apartment. Each morning felt like waking into a nightmare she couldn't escape. For 6 months, she had tried to piece together the shattered fragments of her existence, but nothing seemed to fit. How could she move forward when the very thing that had defined her, her voice, was lost? I used to fill rooms with my words. Now, I can't even manage a whisper. Her friends had stopped calling within weeks, unsure of how to navigate the silence that now consumed her life. Ava understood, but their absence still stung. Who wants to sit in awkward silence with someone who was once the loudest in the room? Bitterness coiled through her thoughts, uninvited but persistent. Morning light seeped through the blinds, casting faint, pale stripes across the apartment's barren walls. The fragile glow barely softened the dullness that enveloped her. Her once crowded bookshelves, filled with dog-eared biographies and neatly stacked notebooks, now stood half empty. Their contents were crammed haphazardly into boxes scattered across the floor, a reflection of the disarray in her heart. Her fingers drifted to the edge of the nightstand, brushing against its surface as she reached for her phone. She froze mid-motion at the sight of the blank screen. No texts, no missed calls. No one left to call anyway, she thought, the sharp ache of loneliness settling heavily in her chest. In her loneliest moments, Ava turned to her journal. Her pen flew across the pages, spilling out the thoughts she could no longer voice. At first, the words felt hollow, like whispers of a life slipping further from her grasp. But over time, they became her anchor, a fragile thread connecting her to the person she once was. Her gaze often drifted to a framed photo teetering on the edge of the bookshelf. Taken 2 years earlier, it captured a time when her life brimmed with purpose. Her byline had graced the city's most prominent publications. Her career thriving. In the photo, she stood on a balcony overlooking the bustling downtown streets, microphone in hand, laughing with unrestrained joy. The memory clawed at her heart. I used to own every room I walked into. Now, I'm trapped in this one, swallowing me whole. Ava's fingers grazed the leather-bound journal, resting on her desk. She flipped it open, watching as the transformation unfolded before her eyes. Once neatly penned entries filled with hopeful plans and promises had turned into chaotic scribbles and unfinished thoughts. The journal had become more than a daily ritual. It was her lifeline, a fragile thread connecting her to a reality she feared was slipping away. Even as she poured her thoughts onto its pages, the oppressive stillness of the room closed in around her, heavy and stifling. Tightening her grip on the pen, she thought, how did this happen to me? With deliberate strokes, she scrawled 2 words across the page. Still here. She stared at them, letting the silence stretch, their uncertain and resolute meaning. The park had become her only refuge from the stifling walls of her apartment. She appreciated how the trees muffled the city's constant noise, providing a space where the silence felt peaceful rather than overwhelming. The biting winter air stung her cheeks as she wandered along the familiar path, her boots crunching over frost-covered grass. Skeletal trees creaked softly in the wind, their shadows reaching across the ground like long fingers. Tightening her scarf against the cold, the rough wool grazing her skin, Ava was about to head home when she noticed them. Near the frozen lake, 2 figures stood silhouetted against the faint glow of a nearby lamppost. At first glance, Ava assumed they were lovers, drawn to the romance of the icy night. But as she moved closer, the scene shifted. The mass loomed over the woman, his movements sharp and aggressive, cutting through the stillness like a blade. The woman shrank back, arms crossed tightly, her posture tense and defensive. Ava froze, her breath crystallizing in the frigid air as unease coiled tightly in her chest. Her heart thudded as she squinted into the darkness, trying to make sense of the scene. The woman tilted her head slightly, her voice, if she spoke, too faint to rise above the biting wind. Ava hesitated, her feet faltering as the weight of the stillness pressed down around her, heavy and foreboding. It's not my business, Ava told herself, her stomach twisting uneasily. Despite the thought, her feet carried her forward. Almost automatically, she slipped off the path, her boots sinking into the frozen grass as she ducked behind a tree. Gripping its rough bark with trembling fingers, she peered out from the shadows, her pulse quickening. The man's sharp, angry voice sliced through the icy stillness, though the wind scattered his words before they could reach her fully. Ava squinted into the dim light. The woman stood rigid, her arms crossed tightly, her posture defensive, her responses soft and hesitant, were little more than fragments that dissolved in the biting wind. Ava's chest tightened. Something's wrong. Do something. But what? I can't even. Her thoughts shattered as the man lunged, shoving the woman with brutal force. Ava's breath caught as the woman slipped on the ice. For one excruciating moment, time seemed to stop. The air stood still, the world eerily frozen, until the fragile frost beneath the woman cracked. The sound was sharp and jarring, like breaking glass. A splash shattered the silence as the woman disappeared into the frigid, dark water. Panic surged through Ava like a tidal wave. Scream. Call for help. Do something, she begged herself, but her voice refused to come, locked deep within the recesses of her mind. Desperation set in as her shaking hands fumbled in her pocket. After a frantic struggle, she pulled out her phone and hit the record button, her fingers trembling against the icy metal. Then he turned. The man's head snapped toward her, and their gazes locked with unnerving precision. There, in the dim light, Ava felt the intensity of his stare, piercing, calculated, and merciless. It cut through the darkness, striking at the core of her fear. Her stomach clenched with unease. He sees me. He knows, I saw. He stepped toward her, his boots crunching loudly on the frosted ground. Ava didn't wait to see what would come next. Her legs jolted into motion, slipping and sliding as she bolted back toward the path. Her breaths came in short, ragged bursts, her heart pounding like a frantic drumbeat as the icy air seared her lungs. Later, Ava sat at her desk, staring at the blurry video looping on her laptop screen. Barely 10 seconds long, the shaky footage revealed almost nothing. The man's face was lost in a haze, and the woman's fall disappeared into the shadows. It's not enough, she thought bitterly, frustration coiling in her stomach like a spring. Clenching her fists tightly, she replayed the scene again. I saw it happen. I know what I saw. Why isn't that enough? She had gone to the police, but their skepticism had been palpable. Unable to speak, Ava resorted to scribbling frantic notes, pointing at her phone and gesturing in sheer desperation. Yet her efforts were met with dismissive questions. Why hadn't she called for help? Why was the video so unclear? Did she even know the people involved? By the end of the interview, Ava felt like the one under suspicion, the weight of their doubts pressing heavily on her. Back in her apartment, anger simmered beneath the surface. Her notepad lay open on the cluttered desk, its pages littered with hastily scrawled thoughts and disjointed leads. As she tapped her pen against the edge of the desk, The scene replayed vividly in her mind. How could they dismiss it so quickly? She thought, her chest tightening. You were there. You saw it. Isn't that enough? But the memory of the detective's dismissive tone echoed, fueling the frustration building inside her. Ava slammed the notepad shut. This is why I became a journalist. To expose people like him. To give a voice to the powerless. And now, I'm the one without a voice. Her laptop screen flickered. The video paused on the shadowy outline of the man by the frozen lake. No features, no clarity, just darkness. Ava clenched her fists, biting back the doubt, gnawing at her resolve. Not enough, she thought bitterly, as she grabbed her pen and scrawled the words across her notepad with such force that the paper tore. Her hands trembled as the detective's words replayed in her mind. A blurry video isn't much to go on. Without more, there's not much we can do. Tears prickled her eyes. They think I'm delusional. They think I imagined it all. Helpless. Powerless. She swallowed hard, her throat tightening. You're not helpless. You've never been helpless. Her reflection in the window caught her eye, tense and weary. She leaned against the wall, inhaling deeply, her fists still clenched. This is why you don't quit, she reminded herself. Because people like him can't get away with this. You can't let them win. A sharp chime from her computer broke the heavy stillness. Crossing the room, Ava froze when she saw the sender's name. Lucas. Her breath hitched. A flicker of something she hadn't felt in months breaking through the haze. Hope. His response was brief but direct, and it ignited something in her. You're not doing this alone anymore. Lucas had been there during her prime, one of the few who understood her dogged pursuit of the truth. Now he was ready to help. Together, they began unraveling Victor Hayes's carefully concealed life. Corruption, intimidation, a pattern of calculated violence cloaked behind a polished facade. Each new revelation strengthened Ava's resolve. She stared at a photo of one of Victor's previous victims, her fingers gripping its edges. He's done this before, and no one stopped him. That changes now. Memories flickered like faint echoes. Raised voices, papers scattered across a desk, a room cloaked in shadow. Ava pressed her hands to her temples, trying to grasp the elusive fragments. Think. What did you see? What did you hear? But the harder she tried, the more the details seemed to slip through her fingers, like grains of sand. Still, one truth emerged from the fog. The night you lost your voice wasn't random. It's tied to all of this. It's tied to him. With Lucas's help, Ava tracked down an old source, a woman who had once worked closely with Victor. They met in a quiet cafe, where the soft murmur of conversation only heightened the tension between them. The cafe's low buzz and clatter of mugs softened, fading beneath the chaos in Ava's mind. She gripped her notepad, knuckles white, as her gaze darted between the woman's trembling hands and the window she wouldn't stop watching. Across the table, the woman stirred her tea with deliberate slowness, her hands trembling faintly despite the blank mask on her face. "You don't understand yet," she murmured, her voice tight and low. Her eyes flicked to the window, watching it intently, as if expecting someone to burst in. "But you will soon." Ava's stomach churned, tightening painfully. Her pulse hammered in her ears, drowning out the comforting hum of the cafe. Slowly, she picked up her notepad from the table and scribbled a question. She slid it toward the woman, her hand steady despite her pounding heart. "What do you mean?" she'd written. The woman leaned closer, her face now inches from Ava's, her gaze piercing and intense. Ava shifted in her seat, the unease tightening its grip. "I shouldn't be here," the woman whispered, her breath quick and unsteady. "They'll know I've talked." Her words landed heavily in Ava's chest, leaving her breathless. Her fingers twitched, reaching for a steadiness she couldn't find. Slowly, she picked up her notepad and wrote the question with deliberate strokes. She held it up, her eyes locking with the woman's. "Why me?" The woman hesitated, her hands fidgeting with the edges of her napkin, tearing it into frayed strips. She glanced at Ava, guilt and resignation flickering in her eyes, before quickly looking away. Her trembling hands gripped her cup, her voice shaky as she spoke. Ava studied her closely, her pen gliding across the page. "Look at her. She's scared, just like you were, just like so many others. But she's here. She's talking. That means something." Lucas asked the questions Ava couldn't, drawing out details she hadn't dared to hope for. By the end, the truth was undeniable. Victor's immaculate public image was a facade upheld by manipulation and fear. Ava stared at her notes, her breath hitching as her eyes landed on the name scrawled in the corner of an earlier entry. Victor Hayes. With measured movements, she wrote on her notepad and slid it toward Lucas. "We need to meet him." Lucas read the words, his jaw tightening before he nodded. "We'll choose a location where he won't feel entirely in control," he said, his voice low and deliberate. Turning to the woman, he added, "Thank you. You've done more than you know." The woman nodded faintly, her hands gripping her cup. Ava's heart pounded as she absorbed the gravity of what lay ahead. Meeting Victor meant stepping directly into the fire, but it was the only way forward, the only way to bring the truth to light. Her resolve sharpened as she scribbled on the notepad once more. We need to confront him. Lucas glanced at her words and nodded resolutely. If we're doing this, we have to be strategic. We need neutral ground, somewhere he'll come but won't own. The theater was his idea. It's neutral ground, he said. Somewhere he'll come, but not somewhere he'll own. Ava wasn't convinced. What if he doesn't show? She'd written on the pad between them, her pen pressing into the paper with doubt. He will, Lucas had replied, leaning closer, his voice steady. He'll want to see the pieces for himself. He can't resist thinking he can still control the outcome, and so the message was sent. Its contents carefully constructed to lure Victor out. The stage was set, both figuratively and literally, for the confrontation that Ava knew could change everything. Now, as she stood in the hollow shell of the theater, its grand interior reduced to shadows and decay, the weight of that choice settled heavily on her. Dust motes danced in the dim light streaming through cracked windows, and the faint creak of old floorboards echoed in the cavernous emptiness. Her evidence was meticulously laid out before her on the stage, each piece feeling like a fragile lifeline, a thread connecting her to the truth. And then, the sound of polished shoes clicking against the floor broke the stillness. Each step deliberate, each echo sharper than the last. Victor Hayes emerged from the shadows at the back of the theater, his presence filling the room before he even reached the stage. He stopped a few feet away, the cool glint in his eyes pinning Ava in place. His suit, pristine and unyielding, seemed to mirror his demeanor. Impeccable, yet menacing. You should have stayed quiet, Victor said. His voice was soft, almost conversational, but the menace beneath it rippled like a storm just beneath the surface. Ava's breath caught, her fingers curling at her sides as she steadied herself. The weight of his presence was suffocating, but she forced herself to meet his gaze, refusing to look away. Inside, her thoughts sharpened, cutting through the fear. I don't need a voice to bring you down. My story is louder than you'll ever be. Victor's smile was faint, more an indication of control than amusement. This, he said, gesturing to the evidence before her with a flick of his hand, isn't going to change anything. You think you've won, but you don't understand how the game works. Lucas stepped forward, breaking the tension momentarily, as he began presenting the truth piece by piece. His voice was firm and steady, and for the first time, Ava saw Victor's polished exterior begin to fracture. His jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing ever so slightly, as each revelation chipped away at his armor. You don't understand what you're doing, Victor said finally, his tone cutting and sharp now. You think justice is on your side. You're in over your head. But Ava didn't flinch. As the cracks in Victor's facade grew, A strange calm settled over her. Her silence, once a source of despair and weakness, now felt like an unassailable wall. This was the moment she had fought for. The truth was out, and it was louder than anything Victor could say or do. She stood taller, her composure unbroken. This is it. This is why you fought so hard. This is what they can't take from you, she thought, the strength in her resolve radiating outward. Victor stepped back, the calculated anger in his eyes barely contained. For the first time, it was clear. He wasn't in control anymore, and Ava, with her silence and the undeniable power of truth, had turned the tide. She had proven that even without words, her voice could echo louder than his threats ever could. Jolt Bailey settled into his window seat. He watched other passengers navigate the aisle with their carry-ons. He saw a pretty young woman in sweats making her way toward him. He thought, "Where have I seen her?" He knew they hadn't met. With hardly a glance, she slid into the seat next to him, strapped herself in, and focused on her cell phone. Bailey stared out the window at airport staff prepping the jet for takeoff. Flying was a necessary evil for him. Its charms had faded years ago, but long overdue. He needed this trip. Hearing laughter, he turned toward the woman. The cause of her humor eluded him. Sensing his attention, she turned. "Can I help you? I'm sorry. I heard you laugh, and I was curious. Not that it's any of your business. I got a text from my agent." "You're right. None of my business." She turned away. Bailey said, "I know this sounds stupid, but do I know you? You look so familiar." Suppressing annoyance, she sighed. "You're asking me if you know me? Oh, for the good old days of trite pickup lines. No, really, I'm not. I wouldn't, not with that line." He laughed. "But no, I'm married, not hitting on you. But I could swear," she sighed. "You watch TV? I was in a movie last season." "Ah, right. Okay, cool. Sorry to bother you." Seeking distraction, he fiddled with the video display. Flight attendants worked their way up the aisle. They checked the overheads and confirmed that everyone was securely strapped in. The captain made announcements. Bailey checked his cell phone. An attendant asked him to shut it off until after takeoff. "Of course," he said. He placed it into his jacket pocket. All had settled. The plane began to taxi. Bailey corrected his perception that the exterior was moving and not the plane. Gets me every time. Once airborne, I can relax. The plane paused and then continued rolling forward. The woman turned to him. "I didn't mean to be short with you before. Nervous flyer. I'd usually be flattered if someone recognized me. You didn't do anything wrong." Bailey smiled. "Not a problem. I imagine fans wanting attention can wear thin. Someday, maybe. But hasn't happened yet. You're one of the few who's actually recognized me." "Okay then. Hi. I promise not to stalk you." They laughed. She said, I'm Magnolia. Are you vacationing? Work trip? Glad to meet you. I'm Bailey. Nope. Off to see my kids. Hopefully reconcile with my wife. Long story. You? Getting married. She displayed her ring for him to admire. It was huge. The plane accelerated. This was Bailey's favorite part. Lift off. All that drama. And suddenly, the earth falling away. Bailey's separation from Irene and his twin girls defied explanation. He didn't understand it, nor did she. After 2 years apart, but with non-stop communications, they'd decided to try again. Step by step, once airborne, people relaxed. Some stood waiting for a restroom. Attendants served refreshments. Bailey nodded to Magnolia, who nodded back and looked away. A few minutes later, she became visibly agitated. What's that sound? I don't hear anything odd. You don't? Is that smoke coming from the wing? No. We're going through clouds. Her anxiety seemed to pass. Bailey tried reading. He stared out. Clouds and terrain passed beneath them. He thought about his family. The girls were getting big, about to start school. He dozed. A jolt spilled his water. Someone screamed. Magnolia grabbed the armrest. Bailey thought, air pocket. Normal. With another jolt, the engine sounded ragged. The jet rolled, and more screams followed intense turbulence. Someone fell. People braced themselves. The loudspeakers squawked noise, but no information. Bailey secured his seatbelt and saw Magnolia now crouched in a fetal position. Bailey touched her shoulder. You okay? She said. Yes. No. No. I'm a mess. Can I do something? No. It's too late. There's nothing. No one. Barely able to hear her. He held her shoulder. She babbled. He said, talk to me. I can listen. She stared with wild eyes. The jolts increased. She gasped, I doubt you. You have no idea. He agreed. Holding his gaze, she leaned in. My life's a shambles. I've hurt too many people, used them, betrayed their trust, ruined lives. I stole things. He tried to relate. I'm no saint. You don't get it. Can't. Not talking about a lapse or some white lie, but a pattern. Committed crimes. Horrible. Looking down, she steeled herself. This trip. Wanted to make amends. No time now. Need to tell someone. She squeezed his hand. The plane shifted, and they held on to each other. Everyone was screaming. Overhead compartments opened. Luggage rained into the aisle. It felt like the plane was breaking up. He held his focus. Shouting, he said, You want me to? Listen, let me. Let it out. She sobbed. I've been vicious. Left people broken in the gutter. inexcusable. He recoiled, but increasing her grip, she pulled him closer. Did you? Shut up! Listen, can't die with this weight pressing. He pulled her closer, comforting her as much as possible. Eyes closed, their foreheads touched. They found a moment of peace amid the swirling chaos. Thank you for putting up with me. Needed this. I love you. Love you too. For what it's worth. Shh, don't talk. Nothing to say. With another jolt, something changed. Relief. The noise and chaos subsided. And so did the panic. Another jolt generated more screams. Then a collective sigh as the plane settled into stable flight. Soon, the captain announced preparations to land. Everyone needed to stow loose items and fasten seatbelts. Attendants assisted an injured passenger. Trying to compose himself, Bailey struggled to digest the last hour. He only wanted to see his family. The landing was uneventful. Everyone cheered when wheels touched down. Passengers lined up to begin disembarking. Magnolia stood into the aisle. She didn't look back. Bailey joined the throng behind her. He touched her shoulder. She turned. He said, I wanted to say about what happened back there. Oh, that? Forget it. Acting 101. Just an exercise learned in improv class. Stunned, he said, What? I made it up. I'm an actor. Get it? It took a moment to comprehend what she'd said. Right. Of course. That was it. She turned away. They didn't speak again. He set his jaw and dug his fingers into the upholstery of the seat beside him. He shut his eyes. Who does that? Whatever she'd done or not, they'd had a real moment. Two people bonded, healed. He didn't care about Magnolia's flaws or crimes, but calling that an acting exercise, Bailey felt violated. Whatever her crimes, this was worse. She's covering, hopes I won't say anything. Plausible deniability, my ass. Bailey reeled from the last hour. He'd never felt such intimacy. Her casual dismissing of it appalled him. Still jittery from the horrible flight, he felt empty. Acting 101? Really? What a load of crap. Passing the flight attendants and pilot at the exit, he thanked them. Once off the plane, they walked toward baggage claim, each playing the role of the strangers they were. Not enough distance. Descending on the escalator, he saw them and waved. His daughters broke from their mother and ran screaming to him. Each embraced a leg. Holding tight, laughing, Irene approached with a big smile. Embracing, they felt like family. Welcome back. How was your flight? Rough. But I'm here. I'm okay. She kissed him. I'm glad. They embraced again. Over Irene's shoulder, he saw Magnolia kissing her fiancé. Their eyes met. Smiling, she looked away. Bailey looked at her future husband. Poor sap. The crowd surged as the baggage carousel rumbled. He went to it and awaited his luggage. Reaching for his suitcase, he bumped into Magnolia, also reaching for his bag. He said, This one's mine. Check the tag. She hesitated and stepped back. You're right. Sorry. He hoisted the bag onto its wheels and walked to join his family. Nothing more to say. Lucien in the sky with diamonds. I really should have realized how vindictive Heather could be. What is that saying? Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. When she found out I was seeing someone else and had traded her in for the other woman, a younger, prettier model, I just know that it was that very moment that she decided to exact her revenge. Unfortunately, Heather knows all of my secrets, including the biggest one of all. The fact that I am a world-renowned jewel thief who has recently completed one of the largest heists of the century. The theft of the Weatherby diamonds. Yes, I stole the necklace quite smoothly and easily from its display case at the art museum. I won't go into all of the meticulous details of how I managed to pull off the job. Let's just say that I know exactly what I'm doing, and I plan everything to the nth degree. All of my operations normally run like a well-oiled machine. That is, if no one interferes with my flow. But no, Heather just had to throw a monkey wrench into my work. I have to take ownership of it, however. It was entirely my own fault. I got careless for a brief moment and let my guard down. One night, when I was feeling quite loose and relaxed, admittedly, I had also drunk too much wine. I had bragged to her of my prowess as a jewel thief. I probably also promised her the moon and stars at the time. Later, of course, when I dumped her, she used that information to cook my goose. I just know that she squealed on me and is responsible for my current predicament. I am now on an Air France flight, ready to depart to my native Paris, sweating like a pig because I'm afraid that I've been spotted by the cops. I just know that it's Heather who told. Why else would I be targeted this way? I have always been one to remain incognito, to fly under the radar, so to speak. Thus, the only logical conclusion I can arrive at is that she is the one who turned me in. Now the cops are surely out to get me. They are at this very moment rapidly approaching my seat. The Weatherby diamonds are set with precision into a choker valued at several $million. A choker that I am now wearing as I sit here prepared for takeoff. The necklace is currently living up to its name. It is choking me under a somewhat baggy black turtleneck. I despise turtlenecks, hate the way they press up against your neck. I opted for the loosest turtleneck possible, but it still presses up uncomfortably against my neck. The combination of the choker necklace and the turtleneck are almost more than I can bear. I wear the turtleneck under an equally baggy hoodie so no one can spot the necklace. Normally, I prefer my clothes to conform to my trim body like a glove. My sartorial senses are offended by this sloppy but choking attire. who would ever wear a turtleneck with a hoodie? Unfortunately, I really have no choice. My outfit was not chosen for fashion. It does, however, allow me to sail through airport security without being stopped. The plan is, once I land in Paris, I will meet with a high-end jewelry broker who will give me top dollar for the jewels. I will be a showkeeper for life. That is, if I get away with it. I am afraid that the police are right now, at this very moment, making their way to the back of the plane where I am sitting. My seat on the jumbo jet, like my clothes, has also been carefully selected. I am in the second to last row and am seated on the aisle. I chose this seat so that I can make a quick exit to the restroom if needed and dump the jewels somewhere in the tiny closet of the restroom. We haven't taken off yet, and the flight attendant has just made the standard announcement about how we need to remain seated with our seat belts on and our trays in the upright position. Right after she says that, I spot the blue uniformed policeman making his way back towards me. With no time to waste, I disregard the stewardess's explicit directions and quickly shove my tray to the upright position. I then dash inside the tiny cubicle of a restroom before anyone can stop me. I shut the door firmly and pull the lever to lock the door. I really need to find a hiding spot for the necklace. I can't afford to be caught with it. I don't want to flush it down the toilet. I would be, in effect, flushing all of my hopes and dreams away. Instead, I need to stash the necklace somewhere so I can somehow later retrieve it. I quickly pull my hoodie off, followed by my turtleneck. With fumbling fingers, I fiddle with the silver clasp until the necklace falls off into my hands. Next, I carefully place the necklace in the paper towel dispenser behind the wad of folded paper towels. As I do this, my heart racing, I hear a sharp knock on the plasticine door that folds in like an accordion. "Monsieur?" the flight attendant inquires. She swiftly changes to English, but speaks with a strong French accent. "The plane is ready for takeoff. We need you to return to your seat now and put your seatbelt on, please," she says in a firm but polite voice. "Pardon, mademoiselle. I really need to use the facilities. I will be out directly." I run the water in the sink to make my act convincing and hurriedly wipe my hands with just one paper towel, taking care not to use too many so that the necklace remains hidden in the dispenser. I drop the used paper towel in the wastebasket and then don my turtleneck and hoodie once again. With 2 layers on in the tiny, airless washroom, I am now sweating more than ever. No matter, I tell myself, taking a deep breath in an effort to remain cool. At least, I am no longer choking. My throat feels slightly better, although the turtleneck still irritates me. I quickly push open the door and return to my aisle seat, where I dutifully pull my seatbelt across my lap and try to appear cool and collected. The policeman approaches me, his shiny badge glinting in the morning sun streaming through the small windows. "Mr. Martin?" He pronounces Martin in the American way, rather than the way I prefer it. Martine. My passport says I am Lucien Martin, although it is not my real name. My passport, which is fake, says I am a French citizen. When in America, however, I have a California driver's license that proclaims me to be Luke Martin. I have deliberately chosen a name that is very common, both in French and English. In every aspect of my life, I need to blend in and remain unmemorable. "Yes," I answer politely. "Please stand up. We need to do a pat search on you." "Pat search?" I repeat indignantly. "What are you looking for?" I am not at liberty to say. But with the Patriot Act, we have the right to search any and all air passengers at will. The cop says firmly, "Patriot Act? Do you think I am a terrorist?" I say this quite loudly. I hear a collective gasp from my fellow passengers, who are understandably alarmed, hearing nothing other than the word terrorist. "I sincerely hope not, sir," the cop said smoothly. "Just doing my job." I let out a tremendous sigh. "Go ahead. Do your job. Pat away." The cop uses bladed hands to do a thorough pat search, running his hands smoothly up and down my sides. He searches my pant pockets and instructs me to remove my hoodie. I do so, laughing inside. I didn't want to wear the hoodie anyways. After several long minutes, the cop finally stops his fruitless search, finding nothing. "Okay, sir," he says finally. "You have been cleared." He walks to the front of the plane, where he presumably has to talk to the captain. "This plane is cleared for takeoff," he announces to the male attendant standing at the front of the plane. As he does that, I glance towards the back of the plane to see the reaction from the other flight attendant, the lady who had tried to shoo me out of the washroom. To my surprise, she quickly enters the washroom and pulls the door firmly shut behind her. My heart sinks. My plan had been to quickly visit the head once again and retrieve the jewels before anyone else entered. I haven't seen anyone else, apart from the stewardess, use the restroom. I have been carefully watching, in between dealing with the nosy policeman. Now, I pray it isn't too late. Several long moments pass, and the flight attendant finally exits the restroom. I quickly unbuckle my seatbelt and hurry back there. I frantically pull the door shut behind me and shove my hand into the narrow slot of the paper towel dispenser. I feel around with my fingers, my heart sinking. The necklace is gone. With shaking hands and fury coursing through my veins, I return to my seat. As I do so, I catch sight of the petite, blonde flight attendant who had entered the washroom before me. She gives me a Mona Lisa smile and tells me once again that I need to buckle my seatbelt and prepare for takeoff. I smile back and raise my eyebrows at her flirtatiously. "Certainly, mademoiselle. I'll buckle up right away. I can hardly wait to get to Paris. But of course, she responds in her charming French accent. Paris is the city of light. I vow to myself that once I reach Paris, I will tail the flight attendant and somehow try to overpower her, either by brute force or with my relentless charm. A gentleman jewel thief's job is never done, I tell myself. I need to retrieve the diamonds at all costs. They are my ticket to the good life. The plane's engine roars as if feels my strong determination. The giant silver bird speeds down the runaway and triumphantly takes to the sky. At last, the blonde flight attendant moves down the plane's narrow aisle. She turns her head back towards me at the last moment and smiles mischievously. Mona Lisa no longer. I hope you enjoy your flight, monsieur. Bon voyage, falling to conclusions. Fear can make you do crazy things. Cry, laugh, scream, even kill. At this precise moment, it is causing a man named Joe to run for his life. It is also causing 7 members of an unknown faction to chase him. Joe doesn't know where he is going, only that he has to get away. His chest pulses in and out as his body tries to drag in air to compensate for all the running. His legs ache as he pushes them to go faster. A voice in his head urges him on. We need to go faster. Shut up. You think I don't know that? It's your fault we're running in the first place. Gosh, a guy can't have a little fun. You killed those guys. Correction, you killed those guys. As far as anyone else knows, I am just a figment of your imagination. Besides, now you can be certain that the men who killed your family have been punished for their actions. I didn't need your help. The police would have handled it. Now these guys are chasing us. Less complaining, more running. Joe continues sprinting through the autumn-colored trees, looking for an escape. As he taps into his second wind, he sees sunlight beaming down ahead. He gets to a bright clearing, a good distance ahead of his pursuers. The beginnings of a sigh of relief melt into a sigh of despair. On the other side of the very narrow leaf-filled clearing is a very wide, rock-filled gorge. He skids to the edge, kicking a few dozen leaves over the edge. Gasping for air, with his hands on his knees, he watches as the leaves slowly pinwheel out of sight. A good 1,000-foot drop followed by slopes of jagged rock. I'll definitely feel that in the morning. We could make it. Shut up. No, we can't. I could make it. Well, I can't. He takes a step back and puts his hands behind his back as he tries to catch his breath. As he turns around, a single man wearing green, brown, and black fatigues skids into the clearing. He sees Joe and raises his assault rifle. The gun trembles slightly as the soldier trains it on him. Joe watches as the nervous soldier's finger tightens slightly on the trigger. A single bead of sweat slides down the soldier's forehead as he begins to talk. We're gonna need you to come with us. I'm afraid I can't do that. That's right. Tell him. We aren't going anywhere with him. Puh, please, we're not gonna hurt you. I find that hard to believe. If I remember correctly, you guys were shooting at me not too long ago. Come on. There's only one of him. We can take him. We just want to talk to you. Do some tests. Ask some questions. What if you don't like what you hear? What if your tests and your questions don't get you the answers that you want? What then? Huh? Why haven't we killed him yet? Would you shut up already? Who are you talking to? Nobody, okay. I think I'll decline. Wow, I didn't think you had it in ya. That is not an option! A different voice booms from within the trees. The rest of the group bursts into the clearing, all wearing matching fatigues. Their assault rifles are all trained on him. Just answer me one question. Why do you have to be able to explain everything? Why do you have to know how everything works? Joe yells, with tears of anger welling up in his eyes. Are you crying? What a baby. How about less crying and more killing? If it isn't normal, let's chase it down and shoot at it with automatic weapons and force it to cooperate. Find out how it works by any means necessary. You people disgust me. If you don't kill them soon, I will. Would you shut up already, sir? I don't know who you are talking to, but we can do this the easy way, or we can do this the hard way. Well, as my mother always said, if it's not hard, then it is not worth doing. Whoa, what are you doing? They are looking for a reason to kill us. If they kill me, you die too. As Joe says this, he slowly takes his hands from behind his back. A 40-inch, sleek, razor-sharp, black katana is held firmly in each hand. As they see the blades, their fingers squeeze the triggers. Volleys of bullets fly towards Joe, each trying to reach the target first. His swords move lightning fast as he takes into account where on his body they are aiming and tries to deflect as many bullets as possible. Despite his efforts, he's breathing through a couple new holes by the time they need to reload. They watch anxiously as Joe stumbles forward. The sword in his left hand sticks into the ground and keeps him from falling all the way to the ground. He leans heavily on the sword as ragged, shallow breaths tear out of him. Dark red blood stains his shirt and pants in various places. He sways, but manages to stand, leaving the sword embedded in the ground. He tries to look at them, but the 7 soldiers double into 14. He shakes his head and tries again, but the 14 soldiers are now swimming in front of his vision. He settles on focusing on the group as a whole, seeing the forest, not the trees. Did I pass the test? Oh well. My answer is still no. If you want my body, you'll have to fetch it. Joe slurs. You are seriously losing it. You are going to get us killed. No, don't! Joe spreads his arms and falls backwards off of the cliff. The soldiers dash to the edge and see him falling. He watches as the edge of the cliff and their faces shrink away from him. The wind whips his clothes wildly as it accelerates past him. He closes his eyes, slows his breathing, and concentrates. Suddenly, the sound of the wind slows and then stops. He opens his eyes and sees that he is now floating in mid-air. A faint glow and a quiet hum emanates from his left hand. He looks down and sees that about 5 feet under him is one particularly sharp shard of black rock that would have ended up right through his chest. He also notices that his vision has blacked out on the edge. Something was wrong. What did you do? I took over. It's obvious that you were on a suicide mission with that little stunt you pulled. I did too much work to get this body to just let you destroy us like this. He contemplates his grisly death for a second before reorienting himself. Using the power from his hands, he zooms back up towards the cliff edge. His head pops up over the ridge as the 7 soldiers are leaving the clearing. They walk slowly and lackadaisically back into the trees in a single file line. Apparently, his guaranteed death is good enough for them. His anger intensifies with this nonchalant disregard for him as a person. The fact that they don't really care about retrieving the body pisses him off. They even left his sword exactly where it got stuck in the ground. The nails on his right hand dig into his palm as his grip tightens on the sword. The angry look on his face morphs into a grin. He is going to enjoy what is about to happen. He floats back onto the cliff and lands silently on the ground. He quietly picks up his second sword and zips to the soldier, bringing up the rear. In one swift moment, he puts one sword through his back and uses the second sword to separate his head from his body. The head spins wildly as it tumbles into a nearby pile of leaves. He pushes the soldier's body out of the way and heads towards the second soldier. The second soldier gets cut down in one stroke, starting from his right shoulder and ending at his left hip. As the top half of the body slides away diagonally from the bottom half, Joe sees that the other soldiers have become aware of his presence. Their eyes widen and their mouths hang open as they realize the man that they thought was dead is still very much alive. Joe uses the moment of hesitation to close in. The third soldier is split vertically in half as Joe brings the sword right up through the middle of him, splitting him in half like a deli sandwich. He steps through the space the third soldier's body once occupied and heads toward the fourth soldier. He rams both swords into the soldier's abdomen and sees the soldier's eyes widen with pain. He pulls both swords in opposite directions, shredding the soldier's midsection. He lifts his foot and kicks the soldier, sending his body to the ground with a thump. 4 down, 3 to go. The remaining 3 soldiers spread out and raise their assault rifles. Not this time. Joe snarls at them. Not like this. It was never supposed to be like this. He spins the swords one time in his hands as he steps over the 4th soldier's quickly cooling body. Raising the swords in his hands, he throws them at the 2 outside soldiers. Both soldiers are struck between the eyes before they even get off a shot. The force of the swords knock them both backwards. One of the swords plunges into the ground, propping the 5th soldier's body up at a 15-degree angle. Gravity slowly pulls the body down the blood-soaked blade. The other blade pins the 6th soldier head first to the gnarled trunk of a nearby tree. This time, gravity works quicker and splits his skull as his body slumps to the ground. Joe, now weaponless, bravely strides toward the last soldier. As the final soldier goes to shoot, Joe grabs the end of his gun and quickly shoves it up. The single shot the soldier gets off intertwines with the painful crunch of bones as the gun sight collides with his nose. The shot flies harmlessly into the air above their heads. The final soldier stumbles backwards, struggling to pull air through his bloodied nostrils. The strap attached to the rifle, still in Joe's hand, keeps him from falling. Joe pulls the barrel of the gun down a couple of inches and jams it under the soldier's chin. The soldier is still dazed from his new breathing impairment and doesn't even realize what is happening. The automatic fire perforating his brain quickly takes care of his need to breathe. Joe's grin widens into a smile as he looks at his work. They were right to fear me, Joe thinks to himself. Not like this. He prepares to go retrieve his swords when a mysterious pain stops him in his tracks. His head feels like it is about to split open. He slams his eyes shut, trying to not pass out. When he reopens his eyes, all he can see is a bright orange light. He blinks a couple times and realizes that he is on his back, staring up at the setting sun. He looks down and sees a sharp, blood-stained rock protruding from his stomach, looking like a blood volcano just sprouted out of his chest. His mind struggles to come to terms with what has just happened, but his eviscerated midsection makes it hard. He tries to speak, but all that comes out of his mouth is a splatter of blood. It was all in his mind. No miraculous survival, no sweet revenge, no daring escape. Just a terrified man sprawled, broken and bloodied, at the bottom of a rocky gorge. He lived his life in fear, and it was this fear that eventually drove him to his death. At least the voice in his head is finally quiet. His gasping breaths slow, as the last thing he sees is the sun slipping beneath the horizon. Fear can make you do crazy things. Cry, laugh, scream, even kill. Right about now, it was the last thought that crossed Joe's mind as his brain seeped out of his shattered skull. Late for rest. This story centers around death. I'm late, she thought, as she ran for the bus. Her friends would say that was her life's motto. Amelia scrambled on the bus, trying not to jostle anyone. She had been given a final warning about not getting to work on time, and knew her boss was serious. She was good at her job. But this city had over 2 million people. She could be replaced. In fact, she was one of many autopsy technicians who were employed at her job. She enjoyed working with her colleagues and liked working under her supervisor. The problem was, on top of being a natural procrastinator, she was in school full-time while working full-time. But this was her last semester. Her goal was to become an ME. She had always been interested in true crime as a kid and spent her free time watching the ID channel. Her first interest was in forensic science because she wanted to investigate crime scenes. But death and dead bodies never bothered her, and she started working in the morgue as an undergrad, which spurred her interest in forensic pathology. It was then that she learned she was gifted in reading corpses. All those years of hearing about petechiae, cyanosis, and lividity became useful. She could read bodies like a book. That, combined with her proclivity for stockpiling information about diseases and murder, made her a veritable glossary of forensic pathology. Amelia was well liked at work because she was knowledgeable and friendly. Plus, she had a great work ethic while at work. It was outside of work that she struggled with procrastination. She just struggled to stay focused. If she had an assignment to do that required research, she'd end up going down rabbit holes on a side topic that caught her eye. She would know it's time to stop. But if a deadline wasn't impending, she knew she could get away with pushing something off in favor of exploring her current interest. This habit is what created such a wealth of knowledge for her. Unfortunately, it also made her have to do everything last minute or even late. Since becoming an adult and responsible for her own finances, she has never filed her taxes on time. 2 years in a row, she forgot altogether. To compensate, Amelia didn't get much sleep and often slept through her alarms. It was probably her body and brain's way to ensure she got enough sleep. Her boss didn't care how good of a worker she was if she continuously showed up late. She understood that, yet she still struggled to alter her habits. On top of that, she couldn't stay late because of her grad research. She had a thesis to finish and defend. Amelia lived in a state of guilt and shame over not being better at time management, but figured she'd have time to learn how to get better at it later. Today, it was important to not be late. There was still a possibility of making it on time. She missed her first bus, but ran full speed 6 blocks to catch a different one. She had a chance to rest before her stop, and then she'd have to sprint again for the light rail. It was a tight plan, requiring more physical exertion than she was used to, especially outside in Houston in the summer. But it was better to turn up drenched in sweat than late. For once, Amelia made it to work on time. And surprisingly, she wasn't sweating or even tired. Smiling to herself, she walked into the lab, expecting a few comments razzing her for unusual timeliness. However, everyone looked stern. This wasn't unusual in a morgue where many unfortunate events cause bodies to end up here. It was especially hard when it was a child or a victim of a violent assault. Or worse, a child who was a victim of a violent assault. Occasionally, a friend or relative of one of her colleagues came through. Everyone was very professional, but an underlying awkwardness was always present. Amelia approached the body they were centered around. She looked down at herself. Shock doesn't begin to describe what she felt. Confusion, of course, was also a dominant reaction. Was this a prank? The level of cruelty involved in doing something like this as a prank was beyond her comprehension. "What the fuck?" she yelled. For once, she was not late. And this is how they treat her. No one turned to look at her or even responded. "How the fuck did you do this?" Doubt started to flood in. She grew up in the foster system. Did she have a sister she didn't know about? Did she have a twin? "Who is this?" she yelled as her frustration and fear grew. Still, no one met her eye or replied. "When did she arrive?" her colleague Nate asked. "Half an hour ago," Mike, her supervisor, replied. For once, she was early. What the actual fuck, guys? "You are going too far," she screamed. She liked these people. How could they be so cruel? Was this supposed to be some kind of lesson for her extreme tardiness? Like an extreme example of what could happen if she continued living her life always running late. Ironically, I believe she was hit by a bus while she was running for a different one, Mike suggested. "Wow, death by bus," Angela quipped. "This is sick. It's not funny. Who is this?" she cried. Mike stepped back right into her, literally into her. It was slowly dawning on Amelia that this wasn't a prank. She looked down at the corpse that was obviously hers. She was dead. She was hit by a bus. It was unfathomable, but she still had a lot to do. "I don't think there is a need for an autopsy," Mike announced. Slowly, everyone turned away. and Amelia took the chance to step closer to her body. "Wait," she exclaimed. No one listened. Amelia remembered her last moments. She had gotten in an argument with a man near the bus stop. His attempt at catcalling was graphic and disturbing, and she told him, "Shut the fuck up, creep." He retorted with a comment suggesting she needed to be raped. "What the fuck is wrong with you?" Amelia demanded. "You're an uptight bitch who needs a good dicking down, whether you want one or not," he replied. "I don't have time for this," she mumbled to herself while looking around for help. She saw a cop car across the street and started to head that way. She had to pause because a bus was rapidly approaching her stop. The last thing she remembers is being pushed. "This was not an accident," she yelled at her colleagues. Desperation set in as she realized this would be recorded as an accident instead of the murder it was. Legally, it was probably manslaughter, but when you're the one killed, you feel murdered, not manslaughtered. Her colleagues continued to go about their business as Mike filled out the paperwork. "Please look again, Mike," she said as she peered over his shoulder. She watched him type the details, or her death, which she found the most surreal event of the day. "Please," she whispered again, before going to look at her body for evidence that she had been pushed. She needed someone to turn herself over. She even reached out herself, but in her non-corporeal state, there was nothing she could do. She cried tearlessly as she lost hope. "I feel we should do something more for Amelia," Angela said. "Like plan her funeral," Mike suggested. She had no family. "I was thinking more along the lines of an autopsy," she offered. "Amelia would have wanted one." It's true. Even if she hadn't suspected an attack, she still would want an autopsy. She had already planned for her body to be donated to the body farm when she died. She had lived a life of science and wanted to continue in death. "You're right," Mike said. Before getting up, he changed the paperwork to justify an autopsy. Amelia waited as patiently as she could until it happened. Her body was finally rolled over, and there were marks indicating that she wasn't just pushed, but punched in the back with 2 fists. "Holy shit," Angela remarked. Stunned, the whole team began discussing possibilities as Amelia felt herself being pulled away. "No, I don't want to go," she cried. This would be the final rabbit hole she'd ever go down, and the most important one to her. She fought against this invisible force tugging her away because her interest was piqued. She had to know that they solved this crime. The cops needed to know, to look at security cameras so they could find this guy. She physically felt like she was in a game of tug of war, with her soul being the middle of the rope. Finally, one last tug pulled her away. There's at least one place she could not be late for, to the end of the line, When I was a child, I loved trains. Pretty typical little boy enchantment, I think. Wooden tracks and tiny metal wheels, 100 different configurations across my bedroom floor, with the train track pattern carpet. We lived in the countryside, and the trains only ran through the city, so seeing the real thing on a rare outing was like Christmas and birthdays combined. I remember even when I got older that my mother and I would stop at the side of the footpath to watch as they shot over the tracks. I never liked Thomas the Tank Engine, though. The faces creeped me out. I'm mostly neutral about trains now, I think. Adulthood makes you neutral about the things that excited you in childhood, or they encourage you to act like you're neutral about them. I started taking the train daily in my second year of university, and I guess it lost some of its shininess, but I was never as miserable with the journey as some of my fellow commuters. If I had to sit for 40 minutes either way, might as well spend it on a speed-smooth train, watching the landscape shoot by like I'd imagined as a kid. I can't say there's a lot of joy in it today, even if it seems a little fitting in some ways. Beginning and end, you know. A child dreaming of trains, and an adult booking it to the fastest one possible. I still push through to my usual car, the one with the most windows and the best views, opting to look our desecrated landscape in the eyes as we passed over it. The car is emptier than I thought it would be. Are people not flocking to the trains, desperate for a seat, a chance to watch everything flying past? And I settle where I can watch the landscape and the car around me from the same place. I rode to the end of the line once, when I had first moved to the city, and just wanted to quietly indulge that train-loving child still in my chest. I moved from seat to seat as the train emptied, getting the best views and just existing in the feeling. I think I was listening to Imagine Dragons, or something equally fitting for my youth. Just watching everything fly past and trying not to think about grades and professor and facsimiles of friends. All of that stuff had seemed so important back then, like it was the whole world. Today, I'll make that same trip, the end of the line with my eyes on the horizon. No music, though. Today, I'll keep my focus sharp. The car fills slowly and brings with it more commotion than usual. Groups of people talking in frantic pitches and hysterical sobs. Some are dark and grouchy. Those pessimistic, I told you so people. Some are trying to project sunlight through their shaking hands, smiling and saying how much better things will be at the end of the line. All of them are afraid. I am too, but I'm glad to be on the train. The train seems to be faster than usual when it at last sets off. I suppose safety restrictions around speed don't matter anymore. It's still safer than off the train, and there's less to worry about when nothing is coming in the other direction. When we pass the motorway, everything is the same. All the cars heading north, nothing passing the other way. All the lanes filled up to the brim. Those are the people who couldn't leave a thing behind, who filled their seats with books and family heirlooms and nice coats. A nice thought, but none of them will make it to the north. That's what the men across the car are saying, shaking heads to hide their shaking hands. We ride for maybe half an hour before someone spots them. It starts with gasps of horror among friends, pointing and screaming. Then a child crying uncontrollably in one of the further cars. There are packs of them on the highway, stopping the cars and creating barricades to capture as many drivers as possible. A few of the trucks and four-wheel drives manage to push their way off the asphalt and rattle down onto the grass, careening wildly into any direction that is away, for any dwindling possibility of safety. Some of them make it, but even then, that's only for now. We've seen enough now to know that the carnage will only grow. We all know that the North isn't going to be safe for much longer either, but trains are good for running. We can leave it behind for a little while. They don't go after the electric cars, someone pointed out a few weeks into the first attack, drawn to the noise of the gas guzzlers maybe, or the stink of the exhaust. Back then, the attacks were still distant enough that you could brush that off as propaganda from parent to child, a myth to encourage quiet voices and regular bathing. But it went from an unreal kind of warning to a stark reality, with patrols in the streets and locked doors and halting economy. Then the conspiracy theorists reasoned it was government propaganda, some kind of leftist agenda to keep the gas cars off the streets. But then the patrols all got turned, and then nobody really felt safe enough to joke about it anymore. They were saying this city would be the first to go. It looked like something out of a movie from 2014 that teenagers watched religiously, swearing up and down that it wasn't just some dark fiction, but a prediction of the future. This was where we were heading. Kind of ironic, because everyone ignored them, even though the main character of every movie was a teenager being ignored. I guess there were plenty of warnings. We were still all so late to pack up and leave. I guess I felt like it was a weird thing to do alone. Great timing, social anxiety in the midst of the apocalypse. But even now on the train, everyone's in a group. Those teenagers' girls hyperventilating with their Stanley drink bottles by the windows. Those elderly folks joining wrinkled hands and sharing memories they're grateful for in the aisle seats. The grizzled old men trying to pretend they don't care about each other when they'd waited for the others to leave, risked their lives in doing so. They're always in groups in the movies, too, even if only so one of them can get infected and traumatize the rest of them. Maybe I shouldn't have moved so far away. I would at least have my mother, then, probably disturbingly nonchalant about the whole deal. As infected numbers grew and showed in increasingly graphic fashion on the evening news. "They won't get us," she would be saying, maybe doing some knitting or embroidery or something equally casual. "They're still people," I would say. My train sets wouldn't be out anymore, but I'd still have them, tucked into an old wooden chest. Maybe I'd be sitting on it, gravitating to them as I gravitated to everything from childhood. And when it came to the north, when the screams were heard without turning on the TV, I wondered if she'd show fear then, or simply lock the door and light the fire. I probably could have unlocked the door with black in the whites of my eyes, crawling up my veins, sobbing hideous ichor as the infection twisted my brain, begged me to find a new vessel, begged me to become that which I'd been running from. She would be too stubborn to run then. I would tell her that it wanted me to kill, wanted me to submit and drag down whoever I could. And she would offer her chest and her veins and take the pain that way. "It's always been you and me, Bug," she'd say, without a trace of sadness or regret. "Bring me with you. We'll see what comes next." They're coming closer to the train now. Someone is praying in a faltering fashion that suggests they might not have bothered in a long time. The conductor's voice comes over the intercom. "Stay calm. The tracks are clear, and we're making good time." But it doesn't do anything to calm anybody. We're in the frontmost car, so they'll reach us last. But we'll also be the last to see them coming. It would have been nice to travel in a group, but I've never been very good at groups. Nobody ever feels the same as you about everything, which means that everybody sucks at least a little bit. It's still nice to imagine conversation, but the imagined conversation is much more between several variations of myself. The me in early college that's listening to Imagine Dragons, watching the apocalypse, and thinking about those homework due dates that we won't live to see. The child me playing with wooden trains and cheering to pass them in the street, maybe once or twice a year. For a moment, I consider sending a photo to my mother. Consider asking her if she would want to be infected if it was me, or if I should roam with the pack and see her later. We haven't been talking much lately either. She sends me a link to Facebook sometimes, and I send her a picture of the meal I door-dashed sitting in a dirty pan. I don't know how to segue into asking how she wants me to die. There's a fresh wave of screaming and sobbing, twice the finality of anything else. And it takes me a moment to realize it's coming, not from another car, but from the very front, where the conductor sits. I brace myself before the impact, but it's not any use. The train flips over itself. Something left on the tracks, probably. Or the metal itself chewed and twisted away. Everyone is screaming, and we all tumble over each other as the car tumbles and glass smashes in all directions. Some people huddle further into the rubble as if they could ever stay hidden. Some pick themselves out, bleeding and shattered, and try to run. I've come to terms with the inevitable. I don't think anyone can run or hide. I think this is it. But I got to have one last ride on my way to the end. The silent car. Sarah slid through the closing subway doors, just in time, glancing through the windows at the platform, happy to be heading home. The soft chime alerted the passengers that the train was leaving her stop. She sunk into the closest seat, feeling the cold plastic chill her legs through her jeans, sighing as she rubbed at her tired eyes with her palms. It felt good to finally sit down after such a long day. Her body lurched gently as she was transported through the underground tunnel. She had a long ride, even with the trains running express after midnight, and all she wanted to do was sleep. Her usual routine involved reading books to stay awake on her commute home. But even holding her book felt like too much work tonight. The car was silent, but there were more people than she would have expected. There must have been some kind of event, because usually the only other people taking her subway this late at night were the kind that you had to worry about. But they looked like regular people, just a few stragglers making their way back home. Glancing around, she noticed the other passengers were seated quietly, probably just as tired as her. Their eyes were fixed blankly ahead on the seat in front of them, or watching the dark, steady blur of the tunnel pass by outside of the train windows. Sarah settled in for the long ride, slumping deeper into her seat. She opened her book, staring intently at the first paragraph. She willed the comprehension of the words to come to her, but the words just looked like symbols, refusing to form meaning in her brain. Sarah sighed, closing her book again. She glanced up, making eye contact with a middle-aged woman across the row. Automatically, she turned her gaze away, but something felt off. The woman was still looking at her, gripping a handbag on her lap. Sarah snuck another peek, wondering what this lady's problem was. Her eyes were open, but she was staring past Sarah, at the space where she sat, motionless. Feeling uneasy, Sarah leaned forward slightly. Are you okay?" Sarah called out gently. The woman looked like a statue, not blinking or moving, and urgency cut through Sarah's tiredness. No response. Sarah felt her cheeks get hot, as she tended to flush red when she was nervous. This was weird, in a bad way. She turned to the next person she could see, finding a college-aged young man beside her. He wore baggy jeans and had a big pair of earphones around his neck. His eyes were fixed forward, with the same vacant stare. Her voice shook now. "Hello?" A cold sweat flashed across the top of her lip. She swiped at it as she stood abruptly. The book that had been in her lap tumbled to the floor. Panicked, she made her way to the next person. She checked passenger after passenger, professionally dressed men and women, younger-looking students or interns, even a woman with a little dog on her lap. Horrified, she found that the dog was frozen too. She started with polite taps and a low voice, and built up to violently shaking shoulders, pleading for someone to just say or do anything. She dreaded the same look on every face, present yet utterly absent. The lights were all on, but no one was home. The subway hit a turn, and Sarah was propelled sideways. She grabbed a rail, gripping the cool metal and using it to help her keep her balance as she rushed to the end of the car. She shot a hand out for the door handle that connected her car to the next one. Her stomach dropped as the handle refused to budge. Locked. She pounded on the glass, but the next car appeared equally motionless. The train lights flickered, and for a brief moment, she could not see as the car was plunged into darkness. She held her breath as her heart hammered against her ribs, threatening to jump out of her chest and escape. When the lights returned, her skin crawled with dread. Every passenger was now standing perfectly still, staring directly at her. She backed against the door, her mind spiraling. "Please," she whispered. She wanted to close her eyes. She couldn't, though. She was too afraid of what might happen if she looked away. Instead of words, she heard whispers, soft at first, like the jostling and whooshing noises from the train in motion, but quickly growing louder. They filled the car, echoing unintelligible murmurs. The voices were angry, thick with accusation in her ears. What had she done to upset them? "Stop!" Sarah cried. She jammed her fingers into her ears, plugging them. It didn't help. The whispers grew louder and louder, judging her and taunting her and blaming her. For what? Suddenly, the subway jolted sharply to the right, knocking her off balance. Sarah fell. She felt herself falling for too long, waiting for the impact of the dirty car floor. She gasped sharply, jerking awake. Her head had slipped against the rail between her seat and the subway door. The train rocked as it slowed down, approaching her station. She heard the familiar subway voice announce, "This is Franklin Avenue. Transfer is available to the 2 and 3 trains." Sarah glanced around, frantic. Passengers chatted softly, scrolling through phones or listening to music. Normalcy surrounded her. Her heart still raced. She didn't trust it yet. But had it just been a dream? She took deep breaths, trying to will her panic to go down. Be calm. You are safe, she thought, just exhausted and stressed out from work. She gathered her belongings, relieved to see her book on her lap, not scattered across the floor. As she stepped off of the train, her nose and lungs were assaulted by the belly, muggy platform air. The grimy realness of the familiar gross platform felt like it was bringing her back to reality. Her legs were a little shaky, but she was grateful to be moving, to be able to leave and put the strange nightmare behind her. Sarah made her way out of the station towards the stairs. She climbed up and out, feeling her phone vibrate. She pulled her phone out of her pocket, squinting at the notifications. Someone texted her from an unknown number. She opened the message and read, "Wake up." Sarah froze, her pulse quickening again. Anxiety surged back, sharp and biting. Her fingers trembled slightly as she glanced back toward the departing subway. She saw them again, watching her. Through the windows, all of the passengers stood motionless, facing her. She felt the hairs on the back of her neck raise and waited until the train vanished into the tunnel and the people were out of view. Sarah ran up the remaining stairs, emerging onto the street, desperate for the cool, open air and clarity. She continued to run, pumping her legs as the sense of unease lingered. She glanced repeatedly at the people passing by her on the sidewalk, wondering if they were going to have that haunting, identical expression on their faces. She made it to her walk-up apartment, sprinting up 4 flights of narrow stairs, quickly unlocking the door and shoving herself inside. Sarah double-locked the door and pressed her forehead into the wood as she looked out of the peephole. What if they followed her home? She waited, forcing herself to breathe as quietly as possible to see if they would appear at the top of the stairs on her floor. "Come on," she said out loud to herself. "Get it together." She opened her phone again, rereading the unsettling message. "Wake up," she typed back cautiously. "Who is this?" The reply was instant. "You know who. You saw us." Her breath caught in her throat, fingers gripping the phone so tightly her knuckles whitened. Sarah tried to will the nightmare away, but the vacant faces, whispered accusations, and the locked subway doors all followed her. She stumbled to her window, looking down at the street below. Cars rushed past, their honking sounds reaching her window. New Yorkers moved briskly at their quick walking pace, looking like dozens of little ants with places to be. As she stared, her reflection in the window twisted subtly. For a split second, her own eyes stared back, wide and vacant, mirroring the subway passengers. Sarah gasped, jerking away from the glass. She collapsed heavily on her couch, pressing her shaking hands into the cushions to try and ground herself. There's no way that was real, she told herself. Her vision was tunneling, blurred by exhaustion and fear. Her breathing came manually, in and out. She willed herself in and out, in and out, in and January 21st. It was another one of those days. The rain was pouring down like iron sheets. The train had come half an hour late, and I had lost my wallet in the station bathroom. In moments like these, you truly wonder whether a higher power was out to get you. When the train finally pulled up at 1:30, I glared it down. Most people would have been blown away by the pristine white sheen, the unnatural silence of the engine, or the blast of sub-zero aircon that streamed out of the open doors. But not me. 21 years of life had taught me enough about the world. I trudged onto the carriage at the end and plopped myself down on the backmost seat. If I had been just 10 years younger, no, even 2 months younger, I might have enjoyed the richness of the leather or the antique smell of the wooden armrests. But I wasn't the young fool that I once was. As we slowly pulled out of the gloomy building, I finally let out the breath I had been holding in all day. I knew where I was going, of course. I knew what I was going to do. Even without the map pasted on the chair in front of me, I knew the name of my destination in my bones. Sunset Station, where my path ended. I closed my eyes, listening to the rain platter against the window like bullets. The last lullaby I'd ever enjoy, I supposed. I fiddled with a golden chain strung around my neck. Not even a minute passed by when someone tapped my shoulder. "Is this seat taken?" I prized my eyes open and felt my heart skip a beat. She had flawless skin, about a shade darker than sandstone. Her jet black hair cascaded down in smooth waterfalls, gently brushing against her lower back. They formed a loose curtain over her chocolate eyes, which glittered like galaxies. A burgundy jacket was draped over her shoulders, the velvet seeming softer than cat fur. Her nails were dabbed with a light layer of wine nail polish, complementing her lips. Something about her seemed oddly familiar to me, even though I'd never met her before. "Is it taken?" she repeated. Her voice was a soft jingle, a quiet chortle. I blinked. No, I let out a tiny groan when she plopped herself down, the smell of vanilla following her. The one thing I didn't want to do was engage in conversation on the tail end of my journey. So of course, it was the first thing that happened. We sat in silence for a while, the pinging of the bullets of rain making the only sound in the carriage. I glanced out the window and heaved a sigh. The same flooded fields, dreary hills, the same ashen sky. I guess it wasn't much to miss. The speakers crackled to life, interrupting my train of thought. "Welcome on board the Destiny Line. The next stop is Sunset Station, where this service ends." "Sunset, Sunset, Sunset. Are you going to Sunset Station?" the woman asked. I started, and silently cursed myself. "Oh, yes, I am. Didn't mean to disturb you." I chanced a glance at her face again. Where had I seen her before? A wide grin spread, flashed across her rose lips. "That's splendid," she purred, blatantly ignoring all of the subtle hints I was dropping. As if on cue, she swiveled towards me. "I heard there's a beautiful, ethereal wooden bridge there that overlooks a waterfall. You planning on going? My journey ends there." I didn't bother elaborating. She tilted her head, studying me as if I were a helpless guinea pig. I hated that, the way her brown eyes drilled right through me and came out the other side. There was something off about her. I just couldn't place my finger on what it was. Why did it all seem so eerily familiar? "So you have gone there before," she pressed, her breath the sickening smell of peppermint. "Surely you must have gone there with someone else." "Yes." The word slipped out of my mouth like an eel slipping out of wet hands. "How delightful!" she exclaimed with a sharp giggle. "I did too." "Who did you go with?" The question was a wrecking ball. Who? Her voice was a gong, the words, the beats ringing in my mind. "My fiancé." Her stare was like a magnet, drawing out the words from my lips. Or, at least, she was. My voice was dark and bitter. "What business do you have with my life? I'm only interested in my own life." She stared at her palms. "At least, I hope I am. Something happened to me, and I need your help in making sense of it." That struck a chord with me. "I'm sure you loved her, as I once did to my boyfriend." She was the fire to my ice, the black to my white, the day to my night, the sun to my moon, the joy to my grief, the good to my evil, the hope to my grief, the solace to my rage, the life to my death. We were worlds and eons apart, but we were perfect together. Every second I spent with her was an hour of paradise. The ground she stepped on was kissed by God. She was my Polaris when I was sailing across the ocean of my life. A single teardrop crept down my cheek, the hot scar of the past. She's dead now. Since when? Since 2 months ago. Died in a tragic accident. I coughed and started fiddling with the chain again. Something flashed in the woman's eyes. Car crash, shattered spine. Her voice sounded like an autumn breeze, hiding the cold of winter in the warmth of summer. Dead in the night of the 21st of January. Each word she spoke sent flashes of red across my vision. Gray Malibu came out of nowhere. "Yeah?" I narrowed my eyes at the woman. "How did you know?" "My boyfriend knew someone who died on the 21st in a car crash as well." She cleared her throat. "How did you meet her?" "At a university. We both majored in criminology. We matched each other's cautiousness and prudence. And you studied in criminology as well. Met him when I was an undergraduate. It's funny, really, how similar our two stories are. It truly was. She turned to me again, scanning me up and down. What aren't you telling me? What do I have to tell you? The real question is, what aren't you telling me? Sighing, she murmured, I'm trying to find out why my life took a turn for the worse 2 months ago. And now, suddenly, this morning, I woke up to find that no one knew me, and the world's colors were bleached. So please, I need your help. Her lips were truly interesting. The way they pursed. They were perfectly arched, like Cupid's bow. Where had I seen them before? What do you need my help with? On the day of the accident? What were you feeling? Grief. Are you sure? What kind of question is that? Of course I was. Again. Are you sure? What are you implying here? I spat, clenching my fists. I hated her so much then, the way she never flicked her eyes off of me for 1 second. What I'm saying, she continued, is that you and I both know that you felt something else that night. Guilt. Her voice was the buzz of a beehive. I doubt most people would have liked it. I swear, though, I heard it somewhere before. In the distance, the train began to whistle. I chanced a glance out the window. The rainy plains had been blotted out by a black tunnel. The Stygian wall was a nice reflection of my mind, I suppose. All aboard the Destiny Express. Yes, I snarled. I felt guilty. I felt guilty because we'd been arguing right before she ran out of the house. I tried to call her back. She didn't even look. Before she dashed across the road, something clicked inside my head. But you knew that already, didn't you? Goosebumps spread across my arm when she nodded. The hazy puzzle was slowly getting clearer. What were you arguing about? Why would I think it would be better for both of us if you stop hiding the truth, she interrupted. So, I'm going to ask again. What were you quarreling about? I'm sorry. Those deep brown eyes weren't galaxies. That was my mistake. They were black holes, sucking in everything. I was confronting her about what I saw that afternoon. My voice was black ice. I came home early, and I discovered that there were 2 other people in the house, being intimate with each other. The man, I still don't know who. The woman? Well, needless to say, I did know who it was. I shuddered. She nodded again, slower this time. What did she say to you when you confronted her? That I didn't really love her? That I never really did? That I was exploiting her for money? Were you? Well, I filched the occasional penny or 2. I winced under her glare. Fine. I forced her to pay for my tuition fees. She has so much money that she doesn't know what to do with it anyhow. Might as well put it to good use. I toyed with my golden chain again. The woman didn't seem to agree with me, but she moved on. All right. I think you've helped me clear up a lot of problems now. Before I could heave a sigh of relief, She continued. But there's still one last question I want to ask you. What could that be? I started rubbing my fingers against the golden chain. The chain had the dull, tingling smell of iron. Just like something else. Something dark. Where were you at the moment of the accident? Shadows gathered around her eyes. I told you already. Which is where, again? Steel hands gripped my lungs. I was calling out to her, trying to stop her from recklessly dashing. She didn't listen to me. Was I imagining things? Or was there a flicker somewhere on her face? No, her neck was flickering. It was slowly bending, slowly becoming deformed. Or was I imagining things? She spoke 2 words. You're lying. The temperature seemed to plummet. What? You're lying. You know it in your heart. You've known for 2 months. Oh my. Death is a lie. No. It couldn't be happening. But it was staring right back at me. The truth clicked, like the final piece of the jigsaw puzzle fitting in. I knew now. I knew everything. Fine. I admit it. I wasn't running after her. I wasn't calling out to her. I wasn't trying to stop her. No. I'm a double-faced liar. Yes, that's what I am. A psychopath. My fiancée did not die in an accident. I killed her. I killed her. I killed her. I killed her. I dragged her out of the house. I threw her in front of a speeding gray Malibu. Oh, I watched her die. I knew it in my bones. Oh, then what are you? How are you here? Haunting me to my very last day. Why have you come back? Why? Are you even real? That, she whispered. You will never know. You have lived 2 months in anguish because I never truly left you. Every hour of your life has felt like a tortured second crawling by. Just look at what's hanging from your neck, the golden mark of Cain. I tore it off the chain and pressed it against my face. No, forgive me, please. Tears streamed down my face, a waterfall of guilt. I'll do anything. The train came to a stop at the station. Sunset. The end of the line. Oh, her smile. I hated her smile. The way they were draped over the fury within her. She glanced out the window, out of the station, out of the world. I followed her gaze at the bridge overlooking the waterfall, where it all began. There's always a way out. She stood up. How horrible she looked. The way her head was tilted to the side, almost as if her spine was broken. I trust you'll know what to do. Goodbye, Daigel. She stepped off the train, late for rest. This story centers around death. I'm late, she thought, as she ran for the bus. Her friends would say, That was her life's motto. Amelia scrambled on the bus, trying not to jostle anyone. She had been given a final warning about not getting to work on time and knew her boss was serious. She was good at her job, but this city had over 2 million people. She could be replaced. In fact, she was one of many autopsy technicians who were employed at her job. She enjoyed working with her colleagues and liked working under her supervisor. The problem was, on top of being a natural procrastinator, she was in school full-time while working full-time. But this was her last semester. Her goal was to become an ME. She had always been interested in true crime as a kid and spent her free time watching the ID channel. Her first interest was in forensic science because she wanted to investigate crime scenes. But death and dead bodies never bothered her. And she started working in the morgue as an undergrad, which spurred her interest in forensic pathology. It was then that she learned she was gifted in reading corpses. All those years of hearing about petechiae, cyanosis, and lividity became useful. She could read bodies like a book. That, combined with her proclivity for stockpiling information about diseases and murder, made her a veritable glossary of forensic pathology. Amelia was well liked at work because she was knowledgeable and friendly. Plus, she had a great work ethic while at work. It was outside of work that she struggled with procrastination. She just struggled to stay focused. If she had an assignment to do that required research, she'd end up going down rabbit holes on a side topic that caught her eye. She would know it's time to stop. But if a deadline wasn't impending, she knew she could get away with pushing something off in favor of exploring her current interest. This habit is what created such a wealth of knowledge for her. Unfortunately, it also made her have to do everything last minute or even late. Since becoming an adult and responsible for her own finances, she has never filed her taxes on time. 2 years in a row, she forgot altogether. To compensate, Amelia didn't get much sleep and often slept through her alarms. It was probably her body and brain's way to ensure she got enough sleep. Her boss didn't care how good of a worker she was if she continuously showed up late. She understood that, yet she still struggled to alter her habits. On top of that, she couldn't stay late because of her grad research. She had a thesis to finish and defend. Amelia lived in a state of guilt and shame over not being better at time management, but figured she'd have time to learn how to get better at it later. Today, it was important to not be late. There was still a possibility of making it on time. She missed her first bus, but ran full speed 6 blocks to catch a different one. She had a chance to rest before her stop, and then she'd have to sprint again for the light rail. It was a tight plan, requiring more physical exertion than she was used to. especially outside in Houston in the summer. But it was better to turn up drenched in sweat than late. For once, Amelia made it to work on time. And surprisingly, she wasn't sweating or even tired. Smiling to herself, she walked into the lab, expecting a few comments razzing her for unusual timeliness. However, everyone looked stern. This wasn't unusual in a morgue where many unfortunate events cause bodies to end up here. It was especially hard when it was a child or a victim of a violent assault. Or worse, a child who was a victim of a violent assault. Occasionally, a friend or relative of one of her colleagues came through. Everyone was very professional, but an underlying awkwardness was always present. Amelia approached the body they were centered around. She looked down at herself. Shock doesn't begin to describe what she felt. Confusion, of course, was also a dominant reaction. Was this a prank? The level of cruelty involved in doing something like this as a prank was beyond her comprehension. "What the fuck?" she yelled. For once, she was not late. And this is how they treat her. No one turned to look at her or even responded. "How the fuck did you do this?" Doubt started to flood in. She grew up in the foster system. Did she have a sister she didn't know about? Did she have a twin? "Who is this?" she yelled as her frustration and fear grew. Still, no one met her eye or replied. "When did she arrive?" her colleague Nate asked. "Half an hour ago," Mike, her supervisor, replied. For once, she was early. "What the actual fuck, guys? You are going too far," she screamed. She liked these people. How could they be so cruel? Was this supposed to be some kind of lesson for her extreme tardiness? Like an extreme example of what could happen if she continued living her life, always running late. Ironically, I believe she was hit by a bus while she was running for a different one, Mike suggested. "Wow, death by bus," Angela quipped. "This is sick. It's not funny." "Who is this?" she cried. Mike stepped back right into her. Literally into her. It was slowly dawning on Amelia that this wasn't a prank. She looked down at the corpse that was obviously hers. She was dead. She was hit by a bus. It was unfathomable, but she still had a lot to do. "I don't think there is a need for an autopsy," Mike announced. Slowly, everyone turned away, and Amelia took the chance to step closer to her body. "Wait!" she exclaimed. No one listened. Amelia remembered her last moments. She had gotten in an argument with a man near the bus stop. His attempt at catcalling was graphic and disturbing, and she told him, "Shut the fuck up, creep." He retorted with a comment suggesting she needed to be raped. "What the fuck is wrong with you?" Amelia demanded. "You're an uptight bitch who needs a good dicking down, whether you want one or not," he replied. "I don't have time for this," she mumbled to herself while looking around for help. She saw a cop car across the street. and started to head that way. She had to pause because a bus was rapidly approaching her stop. The last thing she remembers is being pushed. "This was not an accident," she yelled at her colleagues. Desperation set in as she realized this would be recorded as an accident instead of the murder it was. Legally, it was probably manslaughter, but when you're the one killed, you feel murdered, not manslaughtered. Her colleagues continued to go about their business as Mike filled out the paperwork. "Please, look again, Mike," she said as she peered over his shoulder. She watched him type the details, or her death, which she found the most surreal event of the day. "Please," she whispered again, before going to look at her body for evidence that she had been pushed. She needed someone to turn herself over. She even reached out herself. But in her non-corporeal state, there was nothing she could do. She cried tearlessly as she lost hope. "I feel we should do something more for Amelia," Angela said. "Like plan her funeral?" Mike suggested. She had no family. "I was thinking more along the lines of an autopsy," she offered. "Amelia would have wanted one." It's true. Even if she hadn't suspected an attack, she still would want an autopsy. She had already planned for her body to be donated to the body farm when she died. She had lived a life of science and wanted to continue in death. "You're right," Mike said. Before getting up, he changed the paperwork to justify an autopsy. Amelia waited as patiently as she could until it happened. Her body was finally rolled over, and there were marks indicating that she wasn't just pushed, but punched in the back with 2 fists. "Holy shit," Angela remarked. Stunned, the whole team began discussing possibilities as Amelia felt herself being pulled away. "No, I don't want to go," she cried. This would be the final rabbit hole she'd ever go down, and the most important one to her. She fought against this invisible force tugging her away because her interest was piqued. She had to know that they solved this crime. The cops needed to know to look at security cameras so they could find this guy. She physically felt like she was in a game of tug of war, with her soul being the middle of the rope. Finally, one last tug pulled her away. There's at least one place she could not be late for. I spy with my little eye. It's funny, the things one thinks about when staring dramatically out the window. Even funnier, the things we do. I stopped racing raindrops a few miles back when I kept winning. My mother was right. Winning at everything gets unbelievably boring. Who knew a car window would teach me that lesson? Trailing my eyes lazily over the book on my lap, I deliberate. I could read, but that would mean turning on the overhead light, and I don't want what's out there to see me any better than it already does. Besides, reading in the back seat makes me nauseous. Sighing, I look out the window again. Dark skies press down on the trees, lining either side of the road, their jagged silhouettes barely visible beneath the moonlight. But I don't need to see them to know it is there. I can feel it, like the fabric of my clothes against my skin, like the weight of my own breath in my lungs. It's waiting, watching. It won't be able to follow us past the state line, not when it's tied by its grave deep in the very forest it now lurks in. If we can just keep moving, if we don't stop, my fingers tighten around the seatbelt, because in the trunk, wrapped in tarps, are knives. The blood on them should be drying, crusting over. But that doesn't matter. It won't be the knives that get us caught. It'll be it. The road stretches endlessly. Twin lines of paint vanishing into the dark. The wipers squeak against the windshield, streaking rainwater instead of clearing it. The radio hums static beneath the commercials, like an unspoken warning. To whom, though? You see it? Bex asks beside me. Out of the four of us, she's freaking out the worst. I've long since put a barrier between our seats to avoid the worst of her rocking and jittery libs. I give her another flat look, hoping this one will shut her up for the rest of our trip. If I did, don't you think I would have said something by now? She whimpers and turns back to her own window, staring wide-eyed at the trees. I meet Rick's eyes in the rearview mirror, and Theo side-eyes me from the passenger seat. None of us say a word. In truth, I can see it. The shifting shadow that vaults across the street every few feet before melting into the trees. It got so out of hand. It was never. No, we did mean to do it. We just didn't think it'd come back to bite us like it did. Is doing. What's also true is that Bex will not be making it past the state limits with us. She can't be trusted. The minute everything was done and buried, she broke. Broken things aren't always fixable, and she is one loose end we cannot risk letting go, or it would end. We were all screwed. Rick blinks twice. I inhale deeply, sighing quietly through my nose. This is part of the plan. It won't chase us past the state limits, because it can't. But it also will have no incentive to do so. It's why we let Bex do it in the first place. Theo hums and raises the volume on the radio. Commercials, figures. Rick blinks one more time. The locks click, lightning flashes, bleaching Bex's side of the car in stark white. She yelps, flinching away from the window. I take my chance, sliding closer and pulling her into an embrace. It'll be okay, I whisper into her hair. Bex clutches at me, desperate. I let her. Everyone deserves comfort in the end. I swallow down my goodbyes. Theo coughs. I kick at his seat. Shut it, my hit says. The timing needs to be right. A shift in the trees. Closer now. The weight of something pressing against the night, watching. Expectant. "Do you hear that?" Bex whispers, voice barely there. "Like scraping." I don't answer, because she doesn't hear scraping. She hears breathing. "Shh, nothing's there. You are just hearing things," I finally say, petting her hair. She doesn't feel me slide her seatbelt off or reach for the door handle. The door pops open. "Mila," she whispers. "Wait." Her fingers dig into my collar. She feels it now. The open air behind her. Too late. I pry her hands off me, using the impulse to send her flying out of the car. "Sorry." I squeeze her one last time to make the hard push I give her. Bex screams. Her arms flail, desperate. For the door, for me, for anything. Her fingers catch on the seatbelt. All in vain. She tumbles, hitting the pavement in a mess of limbs. I should look away, but I don't. It roars. I turn just in time to see it pounce on the prone body on the road through the rear window. Rick finally breathes a sigh of relief, and seeing him do so uncoils the tight knot of tension between my shoulders. Theo closes his eyes and smiles, whistling along with the song playing. The car feels bigger now, quieter. I roll my shoulders, adjusting to the absence. Something lingers in the air, something final, or perhaps something new. 4 down to 3, a new dynamic. Interesting. It's a shame, but change is necessary sometimes, and there is no better time than right now. Isn't that the saying? I unbuckle my seat belt and close the car door. Smooth, careful. I lean between the front seats, smirking at Theo. He rolls his eyes, shaking his head fondly. I kiss Rick on the cheek, breathing in his cologne. He reaches up to stroke my cheek, takes his eyes off the road, long enough to kiss the corner of my mouth. "Not a word," he murmurs. "To our grave." I grin. It roars behind us. Bex doesn't. We cross the state limits. I sit back. The rain races down my window enthusiastically. Would you look at that? I win again. Just 2 more hours to get home. A new life. It's like I'm starting over again, James thought to himself as he gazed out of the car window. I am Sisyphus. But I reached the top of the mountain only to find another that reaches steeper and higher. What then? What will happen when I reach the top? Will I ever see the view? "James, you still with us, buddy?" David asked as he tapped James on the forehead. "Huh?" "Oh, yeah. I was just thinking," James replied as he continued to gaze out of the window. The trees lining the sides of the road blurred if he didn't focus on them. As the car zoomed along, James caught glimpses of the blue sky and flat farmland behind the trees. These moments were precious in a way he hadn't yet come to appreciate. "Jimmy, snap out of it," Caitlin, David's girlfriend, replied. "What? I'm just enjoying the scenery." It's like an 8-hour drive. Can't I just chill for a while? James said, more indifferent to talking and thinking than he'd let on. Thoughts of the future had become a burden in his bored mind, swirling around his consciousness as if they had nowhere else to go. Most of his thoughts disappeared into the ether, but not these. This is the last time we're going to be together for a while. You're moving to the big city, Caitlin replied with an upbeat attitude. She didn't even believe what she just said, but wanted to coax her friend out of his funk. Is it that obvious? What do you mean? You know I'm only a train ride away. I'm just thinking, don't worry about me. We'll be able to have all the fun when we get there, James replied, measured but dazed all the time in the world. That's what it feels like. This exists in a space in between my past life and my future. This trip is all in the present, my moment of a finite infinity. For these last few days, my mind is exactly where it needs to be. And for that, I step outside of the bounds of time and into my own world. Will you miss all of this while you're in that concrete jungle for weeks or months at a time? David asked him. I won't be gone that long. Weeks, maybe. But that's nothing. Plus, you gotta support me chasing my dream. It's part of who I am, James replied. You didn't answer the question, Caitlin replied. Yeah, I'll probably miss it, James said. It's my home, but it's not like I'll never be back. You never know. You might like it there in the city. Then I won't regret it. Regret it? Maybe not. But you'll lose a part of yourself. Is it worth that sacrifice? I haven't even left yet. That's a pretty big assumption. Do you like who you are? Caitlin asked. What is this? James said, I thought this was a road trip, not an intervention. You didn't answer the question again. Why do I owe you an answer? Why write when you ask? That's pretty personal. No matter how long I've known you, you know where we're going, what we're going to do. You need to answer. We need to know. Why? Ugh, fine. Yes, I do. I do like myself. See, was that so difficult? No. But it was a lot of pressure on the answer. Do you feel the release? The release of confession? I guess. Exactly. I knew you'd be a great fit. Where are we going? David, you've been quiet, James asked. You'll just have to see, David replied. Shoot. I mean, 8 hours into the Canadian wilderness. It's probably not too cold. It's spring, after all. But still, do we really have a plan on where we're gonna stay? All we need is a tent, sleeping bag, some water, and food. We'll be fine, David replied. But where are we going? You said you had a plan. Don't worry about it, James. It's a surprise. The conversation died down for a while, giving James a moment of reprieve. One that he needed now more than ever. His introspective nature, combined with the uncertainty he was feeling with his friends, was beginning to take up more space in his mind. Maybe, I don't know, Dave and Kate as well as I thought. We've only been friends for a year or so, but I thought that was long enough. A vacation into the unknown, they said. A vacation into the unknown. I thought. What a wonderful way to separate my past and future, a moment outside of time. At least, metaphorically, a moment outside of time. That was the last thought that crossed James's mind as he drifted off into a light nap, waking periodically with the increasing bumps on the road as the pavement became worn. It was a clear sign that they were getting closer. The harsh winter weather would break down the concrete year after year until it turned into rubble. "Where are we?" James asked as he awoke. "You've been out for a while, like an hour?" David replied. "We're outside of the US border and into Canada, just past a few towns. Hard to say exactly, though," Caitlin replied. "If you don't know where we are, how do you know where we're going? Also, how did we go through the border without either you or the border officials waking me up?" "Oh, don't worry. We just grabbed your passport out of your bag, and they let us go." "You went through my bag?" James replied, as he looked over and saw everything tussled around, some items still in the bag and others outside. But either way, it was chaotic. How did I sleep for so long? I just took a sip of my water and passed out. "Don't worry so much. We were just trying to let you sleep. With all the time we have left, we figured you wouldn't mind putting your bag back together." "Wait, how long was I out? Where's my phone? That clock doesn't seem right." The views outside the car had turned into green trees, but instead of farmland behind them, there were just more trees. They kept whizzing by, but if he focused on the mountain painted across the sky in front of him, everything was steady, and the trees were clear. The north face. That's what they've been talking about. The north face of the mountain, leaving all of society behind for a while. Nobody exists on the other side of that mountain. We will become truly alone. Is that why I've been thinking of this? "James, you got all quiet for a moment," David asked. "I just spaced out. My bad," James replied. "Yeah, don't worry about my bag. Thanks for letting me sleep." The mountain grew larger as they approached. Seemingly every few minutes, there was a noticeable change in the horizon. The mountain is growing, but the clock is barely changing. How is that possible? It's like we've driven hours in minutes. The closer we get, the faster everything seems to speed up. Where the hell am I? What's going on here? "We're here," Caitlin said with a tone of excitement and playfulness. James opened the car door and stepped outside. It was like nothing he had ever seen. The mountain was all around them, like a cylinder cut out of rock, as high as he could see. The car was in a clearing, but broadly, there were more of the green coniferous trees that surrounded the mountain. It was dark outside, and as James craned his neck towards the sky, the constellations were so luminescent. From the moment that I stepped out of the car into this other world, I couldn't hear a sound. It was so quiet, like shifting between realms. But now, all I can hear is the sound of that hum. James's thoughts became frantic. A consistent hum. Sometimes voices. More voices. Chaotic whispers echoing across the open cavern. Where are David and Caitlin? The trunk is open. But they're gone? How is that possible? What am I doing in these clothes? What am I doing here? What's this? A red robe? I see the smiles coming out of the trees. The voices are getting louder. Please, God, give me a chance to climb that mountain. I want to be Sisyphus again. I know where I am now, and all I want to do is be back home, ready to go to the concrete jungle, ready to climb the mountain.